Okay, well, just to welcome everyone to the Flexible Route webinar. My name is Brian Rankin with Chartered Accountants Ireland. You're very welcome to the webinar. I'm just going to give it a minute or two more. I'm conscious it's not quite 1 o'clock, so we'll just give it a moment or two. And in the meantime, before we actually launch into it in earnest, in the meantime, I might just go through some housekeeping tips on how the webinar is going to work. So first of all, we're recording this, so it'll be available for any Flexible Route student that isn't isn't participating today. We'll have it recorded so you can go into it and watch back at a later date. One other housekeeping tip: if you've seen any of the other webinars that we've done for CAP 1 or CAP 2 or FAE earlier this week, you're very welcome to pose questions. This session is all about you posing questions. But we would just ask, if you do so, just to put in your student number with the queries. It just helps us to get back to you with the answer to your query, because we'll be able to source your email address. So if you are posing any questions, to put your student number in there with the query, and we would obviously welcome all questions in the course of this webinar. That's why we're having it for Flexible Route students, so that you can answer your questions. So we'll just give it a moment or two more, maybe until 1 or 2 minutes past 1, and then we'll rattle into it in earnest, and we'll do a little idea of contents of the agenda and what we're going to go through in the session.
Brian, just to give you a heads up, at the moment we have 72 students, and I think there was just over 100 enrolled, so maybe just, as you said, give it in a minute or two.
Fantastic, great numbers. So that's about a third or so of all Flexible Route students joining this session today, which is obviously fantastic. You're very welcome, and we hope that we answer all the questions that you have, or that was in your head and you didn't want to ask. I guess we've done a couple of these, as I mentioned already. We've done them for CAP 1, meet and greets for CAP 1, for CAP 2, and earlier this week for FAE. But what we haven't done is done a meet and greet for the support unit that Flexible Route students have, which is Nicola and Orna, who we have here on the call. So it's an opportunity to introduce Nicola and Orna and Terry, who's our CAP 1 program lead, to you and to Flexible Route students, so that you can put a face to a name. And you're welcome to ask any questions of Nicola and Orna today. So conscious that we've already done those, but we haven't done a webinar specifically for Flexible Route. And I guess, look, we're all in new territory. It's new territory in terms of online education for us. And for all students of the Institute. And I think particularly for Flexible Route students, you may feel at one remove remote again, which you're not, and you shouldn't be. And what this event is all about, giving you that perhaps a little reassurance on that point. But we understand that. We have been offering in one shape or another a flexible route, an option for students to study outside of a training contract for many years, and we've launched the flexible route, I think it was 2010. So we've been doing this for around about 10 years, and understand maybe the concerns and worries of students of the flexible route. And so this is the first time we've done a webinar specifically for Flexible Route students, and we sincerely hope that you find it useful. So with that, and we're around about 3 minutes past 1, so we might go into the presentation proper. So as I say, just in terms of housekeeping, where we are recording this session, so if you're not able to view it all, not to worry, you'll be able to go back and see it afterwards. And one reminder again, that if you are posing questions, and we do hope you do so, that you put in your student number with the question, just allows us to go back and reply to you, so we'll be able to source your email and to go back. So with that in place, what I might do is just introduce everyone on the call. We have an expert panel with you of, as I say, of your Flexible Route support team of Nicola and Orna. We also have Terry Gray, your CAP 1 program lead, and we also have a little bit later, we're going to have our head of education delivery, Leo Norris, on the call too. So guys, you're all very welcome. Good to see everyone there. So I might just introduce everyone to the team that we have here. Starting with you, can I introduce Terry first?
Hi everyone, delighted to be here.
Great. Orna?
Hi everybody, I'm Orna and I work within the training support unit.
Fantastic. And we have Leo here too.
How you doing, folks? I'm head of education delivery here. I'm anxious to chat to some of you guys today, just to say I went through, I suppose, a very similar learning experience to yourselves. I completed my final exams, not in a firm, working at the same time and balancing all the different things you guys are doing, and also I've lectured a number of students like yourselves in the past to complete their professional exams. So hopefully I can give you some useful advice today.
And
Fantastic.
sorry, Brian,
Appreciate it.
just to say I am here as well. My camera just isn't coming on for me at the minute, but my name's Nicola and I'm on the same team as Orna as Flexible Route Support Executive and delighted to be here with you today.
You're very much present with us, Nicola, don't you
I
worry.
am here.
And we'll make sure you get your fair share of questions and queries will come your way, don't you worry.
Look forward to it.
Good. And I mean, Nicola, while you have the floor, we're delighted, and the Institute appreciates the importance of having a team just for Flexible Route, and just as we'd have support for all our students, we have a specific and separate and dedicated team there to deal with Flexible Route queries, and have done for a couple of years, I think. Isn't that the case?
It is indeed, yeah. And just to give everybody a little bit of background on that, so as the training support unit, we're responsible for a variety of things, your professional development aspect of the qualification, monitoring and supporting our training organisations, and providing support to our Flexible Route students. So on the team, we have myself and Orna. We are your Flexible Route student support executives, and we're on hand to provide you with ongoing support, advice and assistance throughout your entire chartered journey. So as Brian mentioned, we understand your concerns as Flexible Route trainees. So please, if you ever need to chat or be pointed in the right direction with a query, don't hesitate to pick up the phone to us. Our contact details are available on the website. They're also at the end of all those emails you've been getting this week from us. So do get in touch.
And Nicola, if anyone wants to find out where those contact details are, if they go to, can they find them on the website?
They can go to the CA Diary Resources webpage, and at the bottom of that page you'll also see a link to support and services. That's where you'll find the phone number, and the email address is on the CA Diary Resources webpage.
Fantastic. Okay, so Nicola, what you're saying is that if any Flexible Route students are going on to look for that, they get a double whammy because you'll be able to help with any CA diary questions or experience of any of that nature.
Absolutely, yeah.
Very good. Yeah. Very good. Good. We're always aiming to offer value. So so fantastic. Thanks very much indeed. And look, we've introduced everyone to the call. Leo, as head of education delivery, we haven't done one of these webinars before, so it's high time we've done it for Flexible Route students. And we appreciate that this is that they're a separate tranche of students with separate concerns, and also added on to that, we're in a new territory with online education, aren't we, this year? So I know you have a couple of thoughts on this, how we can help, reflecting on that and how we can actually help.
Sure, thanks, Brian. So I suppose two things I just want to talk about here is owning your learning journey, and I suppose the challenges that are ahead of you and the supports there for you, which Nicola really has touched on already. So look, the challenge ahead is you've your subjects that you've enrolled on. So maybe you've decided to do 2 Cap 1 subjects, or maybe you decided to do 4, or maybe you're doing a couple of Cap 2, and the exam that you want to achieve there at the end of that. And that is your end goal, and that's what you're thinking of all the time. What do I want to achieve? And it's to complete that exam, so as you go further on and then become a qualified chartered accountant. So, at this stage, depending on where you are at that study, I'm sure you're asking yourself questions like I was when I was studying my accountancy exams at the same time as working and balancing everything else. Can I do this? What's the workload like? How do I balance this with life, etc.? And what I want to say to you is this is really achievable. It's all about getting that plan in place and supporting yourself and allowing the team here to support you. And I have a number of colleagues that have gone through this similar route and are now, have achieved success through it. And I've seen a number of students go through this route and achieve success. So just to remind you, with our delivery here, we've got the top lecturers there to support you with recordings and delivery. We've our learning hub, which we'll be talking about, and just to say then as well, the pass rate that we have at chartered, it's very achievable there. For example, DBK over 70% pass rate, And as Nicola then mentioned there, the great support team that we have there for you. So I suppose the other thing I want to talk to you about is, I'm aware that the group of people that I'm talking to here today are a really motivated group of people. You've shown that by being here today and by enrolling in our courses. So with that in mind, I want to talk to you a little bit about owning your learning journey. Owning your journey to success, which, as I said, that's achieving success in your exam in the summer. So what does that journey look like? Well, any journey has a plan, there's a map with it. So the first piece of that plan is the timetable that you've received, and then looking at the Learning Hub and how that matches up. So you'll see there, our online delivery has a blend of recordings and then webinar delivery. In the past, we were essentially face-to-face. Now it's that blend of recordings which you watch over a period of maybe a week's time, and then you apply what you've learned there in a webinar. And this is a piece I suppose I want to be really careful how we talk about this. In the past, you went to a classroom. Now what there is instead of that is recordings that you watch at any time that suits you, and then how to apply them. And you're probably seeing that, well, he's saying that a number of times. I really want to get that across, that how important those recordings are for you to engage with. So for example, if there's any Cap 1 students I'm talking to here from that are in the Republic of Ireland, and this Saturday you've got your law webinar from 9 o'clock to 11 a.m. That's covering sessions 3, 4, and 5. So I had a look there at the Learning Hub for this, and so what there is there's 130 odd minutes of recordings to be watched in advance of that. So hopefully you guys have started that over the last number of days. Your last webinar was a week ago, so we've purposely planned these so there's time to do that. So that's your key piece, to watch those recordings, do the questions with it, and then when you go into that webinar, you have a full understanding of what should have been covered, and you can use that time effectively, ask relevant questions, etc. Now, I've probably given you a jolt there to those maybe, oh, well, I haven't looked at those recordings yet, I need to get going on that. And you're right, you do. But the good news is they're all bite-sized chunks. It's very much designed to be flexible for you guys so as you can learn when and how it suits you. All right, but it is very important that if you haven't done this already, that you have a plan in place. When am I going to watch those recordings? When does it work best for me to study? Do I like to get up early and do 40-minute, maybe 2 or 3 videos and a couple of questions before I start work? Or is it lunchtime, or is it the evening? What works best for you? And when you've achieved something, then you give yourself a little reward, which I can mention again a bit. But I suppose the key thing there is, it's great to have a goal that you want to become a chartered accountant, but if you don't have a goal with a plan, well, that goal is really just a wish. So just to emphasize that, owning your journey, having a plan in place, and making sure you stick with it. And also, go easy on yourself. It is hard to, balance all these pieces. It is very achievable, but make sure you look out for yourself on that. And the way you do that is going back to your plan and see how well you're sticking to it.
Yep, thanks very much indeed. So you've given us some helpful tips on study and really what's different this year, and we'll all be aware that we're in a very different environment with online, but and we'll talk about this a little bit later when we talk about helping students, maybe some tips and tricks in studying in what is a very new online environment, and we'll go into that a little bit later, but thanks for those comments. First of all, I should ask, how are we doing, Nicola? Have you had a chance to look at any of the questions that are coming in?
We are all good on the question front. Orna, you might just check as well to double check that I'm seeing everything.
And just a reminder that when we are posting questions, you're very welcome, and it's great to listen. It's also great to participate. So if you are posing questions, just please to put in your student number, and that will allow us to have your email address and therefore to reply back to you if we don't get an opportunity to reply in the course of the webinar. One thing we did over the past week, and I know some of the Flexible Route students participated in this, it was a piece of research that was led, I guess, principally by our communications and marketing team, which asked about how you learned about the qualification, what interested you to start on this path to become a chartered accountant. But also we added in a question there about how you're finding the education so far. And it was gratifying to say that so many of the Flexible Route students found it good and have found the experience so far to be positive, albeit it's very short and very early days for some people on the course. While that's gratifying, we're particularly interested in students that might have had some very constructive feedback, and many of the questions were on options were positive. There was one or two that obviously, and we're very interested in this as well, where they challenge us, and I've taken a note of some of them, and we focus maybe on the questions and observations that folks have had in that survey. The participation was fantastic, and it's great to see students of the flexible route coming back with really positive stories about how it's benefiting them and how they're enjoying their studies, which is fantastic to get at this stage. But one or two of the observations I thought really struck me and really interested me, and just to start with, maybe Leo, over to you with one comment that I thought was really interesting because it was very honest, and it was a student coming back to say, I'm finding it hard to get back into the study again. And this maybe reflects the experience of a number of flexible route students that maybe did a degree perhaps, or worked with Accounting Technicians Ireland, studied with them a couple of years ago. And maybe there might be a hiatus, maybe there might be a gap between studying there for your degree and then studying again and picking it up with chartered, which is, I suppose, at a stage further again, because it's fourth level, if you like, it's professional education. So Leo, I might direct that to you. We can certainly empathize with a student from the flexible route who's saying that, and I really appreciate that honesty. We've heard it before. We might try and reassure students, and also maybe give them some tips if you had any.
Yeah, sure. And it's great to hear a question like that coming through, because we have heard it before, and it's very natural that that'd be the case. Going back to study, if you haven't for a while, is challenging, and I know that's the situation I was in when I went back to do my final exams. The learning I got out of that is when you make a decision to study like that off your own bat, you're probably in a much better mindset, actually, even if you're not aware that you are, because you've made a really conscious decision to do this for some reason for yourself, and that's going to be your key motivator. So that's probably a good point to kind of stop for a second, is maybe just to think to yourself, what is this key motivator? Why have you decided to do these exams, and what are you going to get out of this? I.e., you're going to become a qualified chartered accountant, and what those great things it's going to do for your career, and maybe to remind yourself of that. However, there's another piece I'd add to that is, on a Friday evening, you come home and well, I suppose you're working at home, you finished your work at home, and the couch looks very attractive, but I have to watch a couple of those recordings that Leo mentioned to prepare for. Well, what am I going to do? That exam down the end of the summer, that's not really enough of a reward to keep us always going. So I would really encourage short-term rewards. That means, okay, look, I'm going to set myself a time maximum. That means instead of back when you were in college, I have to go and study for 3 hours. Now forget that. I've only got 30 minutes. I've only got 40 minutes, and I have to achieve that in this amount of time. And then when I finish that, you know what? I'm going to have a nice curry and watch a nice movie, whatever it is. But whatever things that keep us going in that, those short-term rewards are really important. I suppose back to then as well, the unknowns, and maybe you're studying these exams and you don't know anyone else that is, and there can be a sense of isolation with that, and that is nothing new to us. We see that regularly, and that's why we have these supports. That's why we're having this webinar, and that's why we'll have further webinars, and we'll also be setting up ways for you to connect with your peers who are also doing the flexible route, and how you can connect with them through using forums. And we've also got great pieces of support online, in CA support, and in our own area, podcasts assisting you with your study, giving you different tips. And indeed, there's an excellent article that just came out there last week. It's called 8 Steps to Online Learning Success. It goes through some of the things I talked about, like creating a plan, balancing your time, making sure to take care of yourself. What does that mean? That means, well, you have to work, you have to study, but do all those other nice things that keep us going. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a picture there, Brian. And if there's any other questions specifically on any of that, please direct them over to me. Thanks.
Thanks, Leo. Thanks, Leo. And we're going to put a link to that article, the Accountancy Ireland Extra article, in this chat, so folks will be able to see that. I think it's called 8 Tips to Success in Studying Online, or something along those.
Right.
But I was quite struck by this idea of the fact that your exam is so far away, and it may not be a sufficient target for you to work through, and so you're breaking it down. And I think we're also seeing how it's broken down. We've broken down the actual education delivery in the same sort of way, because it's an appreciation, and we see that that's how people actually, how they learn, and we understand how people learn in an online environment, that it's different. So we've actually broken down the material. There was one or two queries came through the research that we did about comments like that. Was it too short? And I think in response to that comment, we've done it for a reason, haven't we? We've done it because that's probably best practice.
Yeah, 100%. It's for myself, I'd much rather be engaging with the type of program that we've designed here than what was there in the past, which was full on face-to-face, huge chunks of work, which does have its benefits, but there's the flexibility this offers, and even the lending itself to breaking it down into, I can engage with this small piece and give myself a little reward. But with that in mind, we've really designed that, something that might have taken 45 or 50 minutes to explain, like an accounting standard in a classroom. We've got our lecturers to work on huge amounts of development where it's scripted and all pre-prepared, and it's really slick recording. So they're actually getting all that information just in a more succinct manner, and that's why they can engage with it in a quicker time.
Yeah, spot on, and that's exactly how we've designed it in that way. Tell us about one or two comments as well coming through, and let's face up to it. We had there was one or two technical issues, I think, that came through at the start. I'm not sure, Nicola, you're still on the call, but Leo, I'm looking at you, so I think we did have one or two of them, but I think we've addressed them. I think that you wanted to mention that. Nicola, did you want to come in on that?
Sorry, I think that was to do with the Cap 1, which would be Terry's area, but I know Terry had just expanded on it a little bit further with us to say that those issues have been addressed. Terry, I can see you're there now.
Yeah, sorry, I can jump in here. Yeah, we certainly did at the beginning. There was some technical issues, particularly on Brian's internet. He has since got somebody out to have a look at that. And I know on one particular occasion, it had nothing to do with it was purely weather. We had high winds where he was located. Everything went down. But Andrew very quickly, the second lecturer, took over and dealt with the questions and gave everybody some time to get it sorted out. And all the students stayed on board, which was fantastic. And we kept going. So it actually worked out well in the end. So we really do appreciate it.
You're saying it was an act of God, is that what you're saying?
It was an act of God, and thankfully all the students stayed on board, and there was positive feedback at the end, so we were delighted we were able to complete what we'd set out to do.
Fantastic.
So,
Was that? Yeah.
We're all being tested this year, for sure.
Leo, you're going to come in?
I was just going to say it's good to note there that, and I'm not sure if it was covered on that, for those larger groups of people that, there is a support lecturer on there. So in that case, he was able to fill in for Brian that was caught in a hurricane. But usually what it is it means there's a second lecturer on there that's actually watching all the questions that are coming through. Now, what we do is we actually categorize those questions so as we can get a theme of what's coming in, and we understand the challenges that students are having, and then we can actually address those and adapt during the webinar to that. So it mightn't be going specifically to each question, but it's understanding the challenges that they have, and then indeed following up again on the forum after that, coming back to those challenges that students have. So again, it's really given not just the flexibility from the students' point of view, but the flexibility in how we deliver to best manage the challenges you guys are having.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the forum as well, because while we have discussion forums, Terry, in each of the actual subjects, and in fact, I think it's in every session, it allows for the posing of questions and for this idea of peer learning. We can all learn from the questions because we all probably have the same questions in our head. We're also looking at a support for a forum just for flexible route students in each year, so that we think that's really important, don't we?
Yeah, I think it's really important because we'd like them to be connected to each other, and I think that's part of the learning experience. Peer learning has been proved time and time again to be really, really useful. So I think it would be great in the normal circumstances if we were attending classes, they would have the opportunity to meet each other, and I think this at least to give them a chance to meet virtually.
Yeah, and to have a group where we're all like-minded students on the same forum where we can exchange, if we have issues or particular questions about a subject, that's going to be very beneficial and very valuable. So that's something we haven't put in place right now, but we're working on it, and we just mentioned that to flexible route students. Expect to see that, and maybe some additional supports that we are working on as separate resource package for flexible route students.
Yeah, very conscious that we didn't want to put everything up at the same time. So I suppose we're spacing them out, and I suppose they'll be more meaningful and more beneficial as they're a few weeks into the course. They'll gain more from it at this
yeah.
point. Yeah, great.
One of the questions that are points that came through and observations was the sort of the level of teaching time or face-to-face time that I think maybe one or two flexible route students would have expected to see much more, live interaction, Leo. And in fact, that's done very much with a purpose in mind, and that very consciously that we have this recorded lectures where we go through the principles balanced with live webinars that have a completely different function. You might tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. And I've seen those questions come through before. So I suppose that's designed specifically to maximize your time. So yeah, you could get a group of students into a classroom for 6 hours and go through everything with them. And in the past, we've had to do that in certain situations, but to maximize your time, actually, what it's designed in mind is to engage with pieces when and where suits you. So as when then you have that opportunity, which is in our webinar, you can really get the absolute most out of it. And what's interesting is what we've noted is our engagement is much higher now than it was when we were doing face-to-face delivery, both in what we're seeing people engage with beforehand, but actually what's going on within the webinar, because people are prepared. So anyone got any questions? Well, it's kind of hard to have a question when you don't quite get the concept yet. So as that watching of the recordings in their own time means when you're in that webinar, you've gone through it in your own time, and then you know what question to ask and how to understand it. And I don't think that has any level of complexity. You really need to spend some time on yourself to figure some piece of it out. So I hope that answers the question you're asking there, Brian.
Yeah, exactly. I think it does. Yeah, thanks, Leo. There are some of the questions now. Look, we got some great. Did you want to come in on that, Terry?
Yeah, I can just see some questions coming in there on the CA diary.
Okay,
if,
great.
Orna or Nicola want to take them, I can read them out because I'm not sure.
Yeah,
whether
yeah.
Orna
Would you, and then we can. Yeah, if you
Terry,
could.
I'd be happy to answer anything on the diary if you want to. I see Orna has passed on one there about if you didn't have any accounting experience, are you at a significant disadvantage in finding a good job? And that's a query that we'll get from a lot of our flexible route trainees. And first of all, you're absolutely at no disadvantage coming to the programme with no experience in accounts. A lot of flexible route trainees, I suppose the beauty of the flexible route is that you do have time to, if you want to start focusing on Cap 1, understand those concepts, understand the subjects, and kind of start thinking about your career options. So think, okay, what subjects am I enjoying? Is this an area that I would like to expand my career in possibly? And with the flexible route, you do have that time to first of all get comfortable with your subjects, get comfortable with the knowledge that you're gaining, and start thinking about your subjects, your career options. So if you're currently working in an organization where there is an accounts department, you might not necessarily be working in it, but there is an accounts environment. Is that a conversation that you could position yourself to once you're comfortable with Cap 1 area, that you could have a conversation with your manager and say, there is an accounts department, I've passed Cap 1, is this something that I could possibly move into? If your organization doesn't have an accounts department, are there any partner organizations that you could possibly have that conversation with your manager about? We have lots of resources there to support you. Our training vacancies, we have a training vacancies page of our website, and that's where a lot of employer partners will advertise roles. Now, not all of them. They're usually smaller, medium-sized firms, but we also on that page have a list of training firms by county. So go into your relevant county, pull up all those firms, go onto their website. Do you like the look of them? Drop them an email. And really sell yourself as a flexible route student. You, as Leo alluded to earlier, you're a self-motivator, you're a self-starter. That's really attractive to an employer, and something that we're hearing from a lot of our training partners in medium-sized firms is that they're finding it hard to get really good trainees at the moment. So really sell yourself as, look, I'm putting myself through this with all my other commitments, and it just shows how motivated and ready for it that you are. So you're at no disadvantage whatsoever. We've lots of supports there to help you with it, I'd say go on to the training vacancies section of the website, have a look around there, and if you want to get in contact to have a chat with any of us, drop an email to trainingsupport@charteredaccountants.ie.
And I might just come in on that because I used to be involved in, when I was wearing a different hat with the Institute, I used to be involved working with directly with flexible route students before they had actually enrolled, so prospective students, but also working with training firms. And I recall a number of training firms saying that they expected to receive unsolicited emails from students. So yeah, they'll put an ad up, but actually their whole system is based around, or the whole processes are based around getting in unsolicited CVs from people who are interested in working in their firms. So that's an expectation that that Flexible Route and others, but in your position, Flexible Route should contact firms, should contact industries, and put yourself forward. Don't worry about not seeing an ad or a vacancy ad, a position up on the training vacancies or another. If there's an accountancy firm or business in your area and you're interested in working there, take the bull by the horns and send on the CV, send on a cover letter explaining why you want to be considered. It's in their system. They've built that in and they're expecting contacts from you. So just to put that in the mix too.
Absolutely. And there's another question there on, does the CA diary have to be completed by CAP 2 students on the flexible route? So the CA diary is applicable to everybody. It's a key requirement of gaining membership of the Institute. So alongside your exams, you'll also have to have a completed CA diary. And that is populated with relevant experience. Relevant experience is essentially anything that can be related to the competency framework. So on that CA Diary resources page that I mentioned earlier, there's a guide called the Professional Development Requirements Guide. It's a PDF available for download, and if you go into that, and it will detail all the competencies that the CA Diary has to meet. So yes, CA Diary is applicable to everybody, and as I said earlier, if you're not gaining relevant experience at the minute, don't worry, because the flexible route gives you time to get comfortable with your studies and then look at where you want to develop your career.
Yeah, and there is that I know there's an 8-year window where we want everyone to come in from the point of commencement to actually into admission to membership. You've got 8 years, but we anticipate that students are going to take far less to make that journey, because we want to get you qualified as soon as possible, and we also, I know you'll want exactly the same. So I think we're saying that you don't have to be logging your experience today, but it's no harm for you to be aware of what the requirements are, to become familiar with what you're going to need to be there, be it mentorship. Am I right? Am I on the right track, Nicola?
Yep, absolutely. The flexible route gives you 8 years, but a lot of trainees will complete that in less than 4. Your standard trainee coming to us with an undergraduate degree will be required to complete 3.5 years training. And then if you're coming to us from Accounting Technicians Ireland, that will be 4 years. If you have a master's, that will be 3. So the majority of our flexible route trainees won't take those 8 years, but it is there in case anything comes up throughout the training period. You need to take a break. There is a fallback there for you.
Yeah, and I should say that the statistics, we've been doing this for around about 10 years, and the statistics overall for students are that they're progressing through Chartered at a far greater rate. As you say, it's somewhere around 3.5 to 4 years, and that reflects the amount of time that students are getting through it. Any other questions coming through, whether they're on the CA Diary or otherwise?
I'll take any other ones for the CA Diary. A question on how do I log previous experience. We do have a recognition of prior experience policy, and those assessments are made on a case-by-case basis. It is experience that is gained in the last 5 years that can be considered since you became eligible in the program. So since you graduated from your degree or from Accounting Technicians Ireland. And if you drop an email to trainingsupport@charteredaccountants.ie, I can get back to you with all the information on how to go about your application there.
Very good. Excellent. So I know you'll keep an eye on those questions coming in,
Yep.
Nicola and Orna. As I say, if you can put in your student number there, we will endeavour to get back to all anyone answering questions. Just put in your student number so we can get back to you. And there's I think the slides are coming up there. Terry, you're on here as well, and I think you've been fielding some questions from Cap 1. A lot of the flexible route students will be coming in brand new to us at Cap 1, and you've had a sense of, or a flavour of, some of the questions that have come in there on the more academic side, we'll say, so to do with Cap 1 subjects, and I know we have some assessments coming up. What are you hearing from flexible route students on that side of the house?
Yeah, and I've just spotted, that's why I tried to put my hand up there, Brian. I just spotted a question there from a student who has put in a registration for the double entry, I think on the 21st, and is now not feeling 100% prepared. So I suppose the key really is you need to do this at your own pace. It is, I suppose, important, if you can, to take a shot in the first window, but do it when you're ready. So for flexible students, there is plenty of time. The window is open until the 22nd of December, and then it reopens again in January. So there's plenty of time, and if you are not successful in the first window, you can, of course, try it again and again. It's not a problem. Leo mentioned earlier on the pass rate. The pass rate is 70%. It is very, very doable. We have, I suppose, front-loaded the course initially, but that is to give students the choice, because, you know, on one side of the coin, you would have lots of students with lots of commitments who want to take their time, but then on the other side of the coin, you have students who didn't quite get that financial accounting exemption, and they're keen to just get going. So the key to this is pace, and do it when you're ready. There's plenty of resources there for you. There's plenty of practice questions. You can watch the webinars again and again. They've been recorded, so they are there for you. And if you still have academic queries, if you send them through to us, we will get answers for you, and we'll post them on the forum so that those answers are there then available for all students. And I know there's been a delay initially, but we've certainly caught up on those questions now. So if you've sent in a question that hasn't been responded to, come back to us by all means, and we'll get an answer for you.
Great, thank you.
Can I just add a small piece there, Brian, on that, just with the DBK? It would be very natural and expected that when you would initially engage with these recordings, that there could be a rabbit in the headlights, like, what is this? Particularly if you haven't done it before, okay? Be patient with yourself there. I won't go too far into it, but, you know, I'm a huge believer in the subconscious mind and what it can do when you step away from something. And what I mean by that is, you watch a recording and that seems extremely complicated, or how do I get that? The next day when you go back to that, or look at it again, your brain will have worked that out without knowing it. So I can't highlight that enough. To give you a simple example, I don't know if anyone does crossword puzzles, but if you do, when you do clue number 2 across, you look at it and you don't know it. 5 minutes later, it pops into your head and you know it. Our brains can do that. So without going too heavy into that, I just want to highlight to you, when you take on something new like that, it can seem challenging, complex, etc. Be patient with it. When you come back to it, it's a gradual step-by-step learning, particularly that first step of double entry. Just take your time in it, okay? And I just want to highlight that piece. All those pieces, they'll click, they'll come together, and then you go on to your next step. But just be patient with yourself. It may feel daunting, but it's very achievable.
I'm very taken with your point about it just clicks, and I've heard that so many times, with particularly when it comes to, we're smiling because we've heard it a lot, that sometimes it just takes once or twice or maybe 3 times to watch something, and then it clicks.
Yeah.
And you know, it is a bit of a cliche, but it's actually true as well, that we just get it. Isn't that right, Leo? And it has been said about that double entry, that take your time and be patient, go through it. Maybe you need to take a step back and go earlier, Terry, with some of the earlier materials, and just watch those again.
Yeah,
you will get it.
Yeah, for sure. It takes a bit of time, and I think a lot of the terms are new, particularly if you're coming from a non-accounting background. Those are all new terms, so your brain needs a little bit of time to process all those new terms. But it is very doable. You know, pass rate is 70%, so it is very doable, and yeah, less worry about it, I think, is really the key message, and give you plenty of time.
And yeah, it was another observation that we saw, that a sense that there is a lot, you know, is it daunting, Leo? There's a lot of material up there, particularly at the start, and maybe particularly for flexible route who are coming and maybe they haven't done accounting for a couple of years or not at all. So what do we say to give maybe just a little bit of reassurance and support to flexible route?
Okay, so 2 things is, if you're looking at it and it seems daunting, there's 2 pieces to it. Is, you know, is that achievable within a space of time? We've designed it so it is, and it's more achievable than what would have been there in face-to-face, with the flexibility and the amount of work that's in it. The second piece, to be honest with you, usually when things seem daunting, I know for myself it's because, well, maybe I need to just get going. So as I've often said to students, it's much more difficult to be looking at a mountain than just to start walking. You know, so if you haven't got going and you haven't drawn up your plan, that's what I'd be doing this evening, and just get started, because often the daunting piece is the thinking about it when just start the first step, and once you do that, you're in the mood of it. As the psychologists say, you know, emotions follow actions. That means you're never going to be in the mood to go for a run, but once you go for the run, you'll be in the mood to it. Same with study. You're not going to want to study, but once you start it, you might go, this isn't so bad. Actually, maybe even enjoy it. Just don't tell anybody else that, isn't that right? But so that's the two things. It's very much designed in mind that this is achievable for work-life balance. And secondly, I just get started, maybe if you haven't, or if you've only half started, and you'll feel a lot more comfortable about it.
Terrific. And Terry, I'll just come in there because we had a plan to do a poll if possible. I'm not sure is that ready now, or we do it a little bit later. I don't know how you're fixed.
Yeah, I can give it a go.
Maybe while you're putting it up, Leo.
Technically, we're not having a great success today. My screen has gone kind of all sorts of pear-shaped, but we'll give it a go.
Give it a go.
I'll put it there now in a second.
While you're at that, Leo, one of the things we've heard from Flexible Routes starting at Cap 1 is a question that I haven't done this before, but in fact Cap 1 is meant for people who are coming completely fresh and who are coming from all different areas, isn't that right? So not to be put off by that or feel that you're at a disadvantage vis-a-vis someone who's coming from maybe who's done business in college or something like that. We're actually starting from ground zero.
It's actually designed specifically with that in mind, that we're expecting you've zero knowledge of any of this area, and that's why there's an introduction piece and then a step by step. And our lead deliverer there, Brian Murphy, you know, he's used to delivering to people who've no knowledge of this beforehand. And often it can be argued actually going into something with a little bit of knowledge can be quite dangerous. So you're often armed a little bit stronger than someone that did it years ago, and maybe they're remembering what they did in the junior cert or something, or the junior cycle, and actually the person teaching you didn't really get it themselves. So you know, going back to this starting about here, what's this all about? Let's just go from scratch and really getting the steps each way you go. That's the way we've designed it. And yeah, look, of course it's a bit scary not having done it before, but it's definitely designed in a way and delivered in a way for people that have, you know, no knowledge of double entry or other areas of accounting before.
And you're learning it from the start the chartered way, which I think is valuable as well. So you may have done it in college, but it's actually no harm to do it from the start in the way that we would teach it. And then, because we're talking about building blocks, Leo, each one will build upon the other. So it's actually no harm to do it from scratch in that way.
Yeah, 100%, and we put a huge amount of effort into that. As you can probably tell, I'm very passionate about this education and accounting, and we really put a huge amount of emphasis. No different to doing long division. There's 5-6 different ways to do long division. If a kid was showing me now how they do it, I'd be like, what? That's totally different way we taught it, because there's different and better ways. We've put a lot of emphasis and effort into what is the best way of teaching these principles and getting them across the line, so as the building blocks make sense as you go along. So I suppose just to reassure you, that's done with that very much in mind, and you guys very much in mind, starting from, you know, your first step.
Terrific. Are we seeing any other questions coming in, Nicola, from our Flexible Routes students?
I can see a few questions there on the CA Diary Mentor. So just to outline kind of what your mentor, what requirements they need to meet. Your CA Diary Mentor should be qualified a minimum of 3 years from either Chartered Accountants Ireland or a professional body that is recognised by the International Federation of Accountants. So that's your ACCAs, your CIMAs, your CPAs. Once they're qualified a minimum of 3 years, they can act as your mentor. Now, the optimal approach is to have a suitably qualified accountant within your organisation, within your workplace, but we know that might not always be possible. So you may wish to approach an accountant in your wider network who might agree to take on the role. So if you are engaging with an accountant who might be considering taking on the role, do point them towards us at the Training Support Unit. We'd be happy to advise them on what's involved in the role. If you're struggling to source a mentor, we will always kind of encourage students to scope out their wider network, and LinkedIn can be a really great tool in helping you do this. It could be, we've had flexible route trainees who have a previous lecturer from university as their mentor. It could be somebody that you worked with years ago. It could be a family friend. So really kind of scoping out your network and thinking, who do I know that's an accountant who could take on this role for me if you are struggling with it? So that is the mentor. Let me see if there's anything else on the CA
Thanks,
diary
Sophie.
that I can cover here.
Nicola,
Yep.
I spotted there's two questions there which I'd like to answer if I can.
Perfect.
One is around exams and do I need to write the exams? No, all our exams are fully online. This happened for the first time last year, and it was really, really successful. So the plan will be to run all of your exams and the assessments again online this year. And there's plenty of resources on the exam section of the website, including tutorials, and there's mock exams there, particularly around double entry and the law assessment. And the second question on exams was, will we have access to past papers? And the answer to that, of course, is yes. And we'll be making them available to you very soon. And there are some already available on the exam side of the website. If you look up the PEC report, there'll be past exam papers there already. All right.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's lots of videos and tutorials, and it's no harm to have a look at that section and if you look at current students on the website, you drop down the current students, you'll see a couple of different pieces that I might draw your attention to. One is the exam section, and there's a repository. There's good resources there around e-assessments and what people can expect to see. It's not specific, obviously, to flexible route students. All students will go through this platform, but no harm for you to go and have a look at those resources now. One of the other things on the current students, and then dropping down, you'll see is an induction page. Again, this is not to do with specifically to flexible route, but if you haven't had a chance to look at that page, there's some really good resources for Cap 1, Cap 2, and FEE on just learning about what's different about online education. A tour of the hub. I think most Cap 1 and Cap 2 will be well and truly on the hub now, but there's good resources there. Just to also say that I touched on this piece of research, a flexible route survey that was done around about a week or 10 days ago, I think. If you haven't had an opportunity to give us those comments, and those comments are really welcome, why don't you join this chat and give us your feedback, because we'd really like it. Also contact the Training Support Unit, who are your dedicated support for flexible route students, and let them know if you have queries or issues or any observations that you'd like to make. So we're here to listen. We're very anxious to hear from you. So maybe you didn't take part in that piece of research. There's nothing stopping you giving your comments and letting us know how we're getting on to.
Brian, would you like me to launch that first poll?
Yeah, if you could, that's great, Terry.
There you go.
So here we're asking, how valuable is this event for you? These flexible route webinars. Would you like to see another one? Just really interested in finding out if you would. We're happy to plan around it, and we've actually got a couple of ideas on how we might what we might offer you in the next one. But look, first of all, please tell us if this is valuable. Would you like to see another one of these events? And we'll leave that open maybe for a few seconds. So if that's enough, I think would that be long enough, Terry, for
86% voted, yeah, and 99% are saying yes, they would like a similar event, which is great to hear.
Great to hear. Fantastic. Okay, well,
right.
I can now divulge what we're thinking about doing for the next one, because we can we had some ideas around it. So, Terry, we thought about introducing people to current flexible route students, and I guess particularly focused at Cap 1 flexible route students, and seeing if we can maybe have some sort of a mentor light system, or to have introductions or presentations from people who have gone through the flexible route already at Cap 1. And I think we're working on that. We won't say any more than that, but that could be something that we'd like to cover.
Absolutely, yeah, we thought that would be a good idea, and we've got a couple of people that kind of from memory that we can remember going through the flexible route. We're going to touch base with them and see when would they be available.
We have another poll which kind of follows on that one, Terry. Are we in a position to ask that? And that kind of follows up. Are we fixed to go straight to that? I think while we're just pulling that one up, is there anything that you'd advise, Leo, or other points that we haven't covered over that you'd like to cover with flexible route students? I'm conscious that we're about 10 to 2, so we give it a couple more minutes, and then give you some time to have your sandwich on Friday afternoon. Anything else we would say, or observations to our flexible route students?
Yeah, I suppose two things really is to reach out to us. There's a great support team there. And even thinking about that next webinar, if there's further things that you'd like from that, but really to reach out, and that's specifically there, and to engage with that. The other piece, I know I've said it already, but if you don't have a plan in place, I put that in place this evening, and it'll really set you at ease, and it'll set you up for success. And I would be doing it with something in mind, which I kind of alluded to earlier, but really the most important thing to you guys is your time, and I'd be really careful about how you use your time. You've got your work, you've got your study, and other parts of your life that are very important to you. So how you plan your study is really important, but also if you find after 20 minutes, stop for a second, what have I learned? What do I know now that I didn't know 20 minutes ago? If you don't know something new or something hasn't happened, well then you're not actually going about it the right way. So that might be because, well, you've decided to take out this study text and said, well, look, I better read all this so as I really get everything before I look at the recordings. And that might suit certain students, but for most it won't. Engaging in that recording is really what's going to get you to learn, And then, other useful tips are, before you look at something, take a blank sheet of paper and say, what do I know about this? Even if you know very little, all it's doing is preparing the mind to receive information. So all those little things, it's all about maximizing your time. Your time is important, so make sure you get the most of use out of it. But other than that, I would just say to you to lean out to supports. We're here to help you, and I genuinely mean this, the very best of success to you in the year ahead. Likewise to myself, if there's any further queries you want to ask on exam study technique, please feel free to reach out to myself or any of the team.
Great, thanks, Leo. While we're preparing that other poll, hopefully we get that out before we finish up. Nicola, Orna, how are we looking on questions coming in?
All good.
Yeah, nothing more so far. Nicola, what about you?
Nothing major. I can see a few questions there about trainees coming to us from non-economic degrees. We'll reach out to you via email after this session, and there's another query there from a trainee who got Cap 1 exemptions and is in Cap 2 at the minute and thinking of applying for jobs once they've passed Cap 2, just asking for advice if we think they'd have a better chance of securing a position after that. So absolutely, you'd be looking at part qualified accountant roles at that stage. And like we said earlier, really pushing yourself, advertising yourself as that self-starter, self-motivator, you're flexible route student, you're doing it on your own, and you're really selling yourself to the employer. If there's any queries that we didn't get back to, we will follow up by email after the session. And just as a last request from you, if you are currently gaining relevant experience, we would encourage you to add your employer details to your student profile. So you can go on to, when you're logged in on the website, go to the My Account section, and you can input your employer details there, and you also have the option to set your preferences for newsletters and any updates that are coming to you that way. So we do encourage you to do that. And thanks very much for all your questions. They've been great.
Thanks, Nicola. And I think just while you were talking there, go ahead. Yeah, please do.
That poll there?
Yes, please. Yeah. And please, while we're just launching that, just struck me that there isn't flexible route accountants, there's chartered accountants. And we now have that route to the qualification, which is, it's going for 10 years. It's very well established, and the market in finance and accounting and taxation and risk and all the areas that our members work in are very familiar with this route. And that transition in from flexible route into contract and vice versa is very well established. Don't be in any way concerned about that. Right, we're into our second poll, and based on saying that we would like to see another webinar, what would you like to see covered? So are your questions around CA Diary? Would you like to hear more about course delivery queries and or indeed training queries? So Terry, I think on the course delivery queries, isn't that on the academic questions on the learning and education? Any specific, going for a deep dive in there? Is that what we're getting at?
Yeah, I suppose that would be around subject matter, where to find resources, what was the best way to tackle upcoming assessments and exams, that kind of thing. Yeah, that's really the guts
Good.
of course delivery. And the training queries then is obviously around, expanding their training and their skills.
Terrific. Okay, so we'll leave a moment. Please do get in there into the poll. And while you're completing that and filling it in, we'd love you we're really looking forward to see the answers of that. If your question is actually beyond those three and we're not covering it in those three, drop us a line and do comment on this in the same way as if you have any queries or questions. Drop in there to say, I'd like to see X covered in the next webinar, and we'll do our very best to include that in the next one of these webinars. Indeed, in terms of timing, if you prefer an evening one rather than lunchtime, no problem to us. We can do that as well. So maybe if you want to let us know that, look, normally lunchtime doesn't work for me, an evening one would be much better. Let us know, please, in the chat too. So how are we doing on the results? Have we seen the results coming in on that one?
Predominantly CA Diary has come up. So
Okay.
76% CA Diary. And just to kind of add on to that point that you just said, Brian, if there is a topic they specifically want covered, they could actually put it into the question bar or the chat bar, and we'll be able to print them out afterwards. So it's another way to collate the data as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks, Terry. Okay, conscious that this is the first of the Flexible Route webinars. I think we're hearing that we need to do another one, so that's fine. We look forward to it. Closely, as we close then, I'd like to thank all of the panel for joining us. So thanks to Orna, to Nicola, to Terry, to Leo. Thank you all, gang. Hopefully you found that, as Flexible Route students, you found that valuable. One of the main messages we want you to get out of this is a sense of reassurance that you can do this. It's, as we've heard here, very doable. It's going to be challenging, and we also appreciate that there's a challenge there, and that's to some degree, as you would expect from a very highly recognized and very well regarded qualification. So at the same time, it's doable, but now is the time to prepare and start work on that. So you'll hear you've heard some of those messages, hopefully loud and clear, coming through. Suffice, and in closing then, from my point of view, just to thank you for joining us today. To open it to the panel, have we any final questions before we close? Or observations before we? No.
No, I don't think so. But just it was great to be involved, and I hope that's answered lots of questions, and it's one of many.
Absolutely. So look, we leave you back to your Friday afternoon. Very best of luck. Thank you very much for joining us, and we wish you every success in the studies ahead of you. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.